Hi, everyone. I'm Gary Knoll. Nice to have you with us, where we're here to talk about health and nutrition issues. Today, once again, we're taking our camera out on the road around the world to show you about one of the most important and fearful topics we know of. But maybe after watching this, you won't be so afraid. It's about cancer and all the natural approaches, both the causes of cancer and non toxic alternative treatments. Join us now as we explore alternative approaches to cancer.
The cancer establishment are fixated on diagnosis, treatment, and basic genetic research, and are indifferent, if not hostile, to cancer prevention. And in fact, in the book, we give specific examples of the hostility of the American Cancer Society to making available information to the public on preventable causes of breast cancer. A couple of examples being, two or three examples, very recently, the American Cancer Society joined forces with the Chlorine Institute, the institute that is involved in pushing the sales of chlorinated chemicals like pesticides and vinyl chloride, and joined with them to say that there's no evidence that chlorinated organic chemicals are involved in breast cancer. One final interesting example goes back to the early 70s, shortly after the information came out that DES, as you know, DES is a synthetic estrogen-like compound, which when given to pregnant women in very ill-advised attempts to reduce complications of pregnancy, after it was found to induce rare vaginal cancers in their daughters, Congress held hearings on the question of use of DES as an animal feed additive, to give it to animals to fatten them. And the American Cancer Society, knowing fully well of information that DES induces breast cancer, information that goes back to 1930, knowing fully well that DES had been incriminated as a cause of these rare vaginal cancers, refused to testify, as indeed they refused to testify the Clean Air Act and a wide range of other legislation.
Another important change that needs to be made is in the whole funding structure of the National Cancer Institute. The National Cancer Institute has steadfastly refused to fund any kind of studies of alternative therapies. And the thing to keep in mind is that the Office of Complementary and Alternative Medicine has a very tiny budget, and they don't even have the right to give out grants. The grants really have to be made first by the National Cancer Institute, and then the OAM can kick in a little bit of money to help out.
While the traditional therapies of chemotherapy and radiation may be effective in treating the symptoms of certain relatively rare forms of cancer, they not only do nothing to revitalize the body's immune system, they actually work to suppress it. And traditional cancer therapy fails abysmally in preventing reoccurrences. By putting all of our emphasis upon radiation, chemotherapy, or surgery, we're forgetting that that cell can reappear, even more deadly later on.
In the old days, 125 years ago, we used to, for breast cancer treatment, remove the arm, the breast, and lots of the chest wall to treat breast cancer. Today, we're only removing the lump and some axillary nodes, followed by radiation and chemotherapy. What we have learned over all these years is that a woman who gets breast cancer today, 1996, will live as long as a woman who got it in 1930, despite all of our innovations and advances.
Okay. One of the most important questions someone can ask their oncologist is whether a particular chemotherapy or radiation treatment will actually extend their lives. And the reason I say this is because very often the person will get information that such and such a therapy has a 75% success rate, or can shrink a tumor 80% to 100%. And while this is true, this isn't giving the full picture, because what most people are interested in isn't just shrinking tumors, it's living longer.
He said that if I took the chemotherapy, that there was a 5 to 10% chance that I might extend my life by 6 months. So being a poker player, I looked at the odds and decided that these were not odds at all for me, and that I had absolutely nothing to lose by going the alternative route.
And very often in a situation like this, the patient will be told that their chances will be increased by 50%. Now that sounds pretty good on the outside, but when you find out that 50% may be 3 or 6 months increase in survival, in other words, the person that takes the chemotherapy will live, say, 6 months. If they don't take it, they'll live 3 months. When you consider the quality of life that the patient will have in those 3 extra months, with nausea, low white blood counts, and other side effects of chemotherapy, that's not necessarily such a great deal. In addition, in most of the studies done with chemotherapy these days, they're really not controlled studies in the sense of a double-blind placebo. What they do now is they use one chemotherapeutic agent and they test it against another chemotherapeutic regimen, and they see which one works better. But we have no idea what happens to the patient who received no chemotherapy, and absolutely no idea what happens to the patient who, say, receives chemotherapy as compared to one of the alternative modalities.
Even the traditional journals, such as the New England Journal of Medicine, have recently published articles acknowledging that conventional treatment of cancer has been, for the most part, a failure.
I strongly feel that we need to make a tremendous change in the way we are treating cancer patients. Not only because the therapies that we have available now and have had for the last 60 years are a complete failure, but because the way we are treating diseases instead of patients is interfering with the patients getting better. In my opinion, we should treat the patient, the whole patient, in cases especially like cancer.
And to have a cancer surgery, they're put on what we call nothing by mouth. So in other words, they're literally starved. It could be 1 or 2 days where they do diagnostic tests on these people, and these people are not eating. It could be nothing by mouth, just water. So virtually before a procedure, they can be undernourished. Then following surgery, depending upon where the surgery is, they'll wait another 2 days for bowel sounds. So you have a patient that is on just an IV therapy. The IV therapy is just simply a glucose solution or a normal saline solution with maybe an antibiotic, which is non-nutritious. So therefore, the patient is not getting any nourishment. And we're talking about the days prior to surgery and the days after surgery. So now you have a person 2 or 3 days later who hasn't been nourished at all. And then after bowel sounds, or depending upon the surgery, they will start with a liquid diet. The liquid diet will include juices, clear broths, perhaps even like a very watered down Jell-O with no nutritious value, just sugar, which requires the body twice as much energy to metabolize, but it's not really nourishment.
I think an important thing to keep in mind is that standard medicine bases the use or non-use of nutritional therapies or drug therapies on scientific studies. And briefly, scientific studies mean that you have a control group and you have your group with the cancer. And you give one or the other a substance and try to decipher whether or not that helps a person. But when you, let's say, take 100 people and give them a particular drug or a particular vitamin to see its effect, and you average it, you're coming up with a statistical average person which never existed and will never exist. So in other words, the scientific method doesn't take into account someone's individual needs for nutrition. So we shouldn't be using scientific methods to rule in or out the use of either certain drug therapies or particularly nutrition for cancer therapies. We need to base a lot of this on individual needs and individual responses for individuals in their lives. In other words, that's known as a clinical evaluation or functional evaluation. How this person functions over their lifetime given vitamin C or coenzyme Q10 or whatever else the nutritional factor might be.
So we believe strongly that the medicine of the future will be alternative medicine with natural, non-toxic treatments, and that the alternatives, the options for extreme cases or for emergency situations are going to be those used by the medical industry nowadays.
We have to look at the whole body. It isn't a question of killing cancer. Yes, we want to rid ourselves and our body of the cancer. However, what we really want to look at is how can we make the environment so unhealthy for cancer cells and so healthy for healthy cells that they will proliferate and the cancer cells will die out.
I chose a natural route because of my friend Kimberly. I saw her go through the medical treatment and they destroyed her. She was 34 years old and beautiful, and at 38 she was dead after spending about $350,000 in medical treatment. So although my aunt had breast cancer, and I thought the only way to quote unquote cure cancer was to chop off your breast, I soon learned that there's another way, and that is to use a total health program involving every aspect of your life: mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, diet, exercise, group therapy, and healing your stresses. In other words, what I did was detoxify and de-stress my body.
The whole food approach is very valuable. In fact, in recent studies in the New England Journal of Medicine, whole foods have shown to be very protective against new cancers, even curative against ongoing cancers. And populations that eat the highest percentage of fresh, whole vegetables and fruits often have about 50 to 70% less incidence of cancer than people that eat the heavy stagnating diets.
One has to detoxify the body in prevention of cancer as well as treatment of cancer. So a diet that's high in raw green juices, it's very important to get the fiber and the chlorophyll and the free radical quenchers into the diet. A diet that has lots of whole grains like brown rice, occasional barley. It is a gluten grain, and some people cannot tolerate some of the gluten grains. For those of you who cannot, then stick with the low gluten grains like millet or brown rice or quinoa or amaranth. With green leafy vegetables, orange vegetables for your beta carotene, and tofu products is an excellent diet, supplemented with the green juices and some of the vitamins that we spoke about for prevention and treatment. You'll be enhancing any program that you choose to go on, and you'll be preventing cancer for yourself in the future.
The theory as to why chemotherapy and radiation works is by destroying the unhealthy cancer tissues, but at the same time we know we destroy healthy tissue as well. If we complement standard chemotherapy and radiation with nutritional therapies, we could actually strengthen the healthy cells and make them more resistant to the chemotherapy and radiation. Another use of nutrition in cancer is an immunostimulatory effect. In other words, stimulating the immune system to deal with the cancer on its own, which actually is the direct opposite effect of radiation and chemotherapy, which decreases immunity. Even though the two have different effects, they could help accomplish the same goal of eradicating cancer.
There's something very special about greens with regard to degeneration. Green is called, in the Chinese system, it's the color of birth and regeneration. And from a Western perspective, chlorophyll is what makes foods green. And it's the chlorophyll that is some people say, is the concentration of sunlight into the plant. And so I know Dr. Bernard Jensen and others have called chlorophyll liquid sunshine. And it's this bright aspect of chlorophyll in the green foods that goes into the cells of the body and begins to purify and transform them and transform old stagnations into regeneration. And people often wonder, well, what green food should I eat? Well, I tell people just any of the common greens: cabbage, broccoli, Swiss chard, kale, mustard greens, parsley. All of these greens are useful for stimulating renewal of the cells of the body. And then the highest sources of greens that have been used traditionally in cancer therapy for the last 50 or 60 years are the cereal grasses. The cereal grasses are most generally wheat or barley grass, oat grass, ryegrass, and a lot of people now grow these in their home. They're easy to grow in trays and so on.
One of the most classic formulations and recipes is carrot juice combined with the greens, kale, collards, parsley, celery, and beets. Beets are excellent for the liver, for cleansing the liver and helping the blood to be well nourished so that can get it to the cells. Another excellent combination that's also very delicious and excellent for cancer is apple juice with either lemon or orange. And what you want to do is get an organically grown lemon or orange and remove just the colored part, maybe leave just a little bit, and juice that with organic apple, maybe a little celery and parsley. First of all, it's delicious. And second of all, the rinds of orange and lemon have been shown to have nutrients that prevent cancerous cells from multiplying, which is also true with the beta-carotene in carrots, as well as the green factors in the green foods, parsley, kale, collards. You want to focus on consuming cruciferous vegetables daily, so steam those or have them in soups, very delicious. And make sure that you have a good quart of freshly prepared juice a day. If you have a diagnosis of cancer, then 8 to 12 ounces every hour of freshly prepared juice is recommended.
When a person really can't juice as much as they need to, I recommend that they purchase the green powders that are available in most health food stores, readily available. And this is because they contain the green vegetables. The green contains chlorophyll. And chlorophyll is very important because the center of it is magnesium, and we need magnesium. We need magnesium to build the immune system, to help us with calcium absorption. We need to have strong bones, and since this also helps our immune system.
Oxygen overcomes the stagnation and the damp condition that people are involved in when they have degeneration, in particular cancer. So the foods that are the most oxygenating are the whole foods, because the whole foods have the coating on them, the bran in the wheat, or the all the minerals that go with the sugar cane. These foods that are whole have a bitter component in them that drives oxygen into the cells. The oxygen then dries up the moisture in the body and the toxic deposits, and therefore eliminates cancer.
Many foods provoke alkaline and acidity. Now we have to know where that is. That can be in the surrounding tissues, that means in the tissues in between the cells. It can be in the blood, it can be in the urine, it can be in the saliva. When we talk about alkalizing foods for the venous blood where it's measured, then it's exactly the opposite of what we always have been reading in all the books. Basically, it's meat, it's dairy, and all these other materials. What we have to realize that the blood is a buffer system, and as usual overcompensates. The body always does that, overcompensates, and is associated to an increased acidity of the urine and the intercellular spaces, that is the spaces in between the cells.
There are several very good scientific studies that really show the need for higher levels than normal of various types of antioxidants for the prevention of cancer and also the treatment of cancer. In terms of the treatment, studies have shown that higher levels of antioxidants such as beta-carotene, glutathione, zinc, for example, actually increase the use of chemotherapy and radiation.
Reduced glutathione has been found at lower levels in cancer patients. Then there's evidence from cell culture studies. In cell culture, adding reduced glutathione to cancer cells causes the cancer cells to die. It does this by a process known as apoptosis. Apoptosis is genetically programmed cell death. So in other words, reduced glutathione causes the tumors to commit suicide. Chemotherapeutic drugs do this as well, but they have the side effect of inducing the same process in healthy cells. So whereas chemotherapeutic drugs have adverse side effects, reduced glutathione without affecting the healthy cells can kill cancer cells without side effect.
Antioxidants in persons with cancer work very differently than persons without cancer. And it seems that those with cancer need a much higher level than normal, probably due to the body's adaptation to the cancer requiring greater needs to keep cancer in check. So vitamin C in the gram doses are very important, which is far beyond the RDA doses, which are just in milligrams. And then vitamin E enhances immunity, as does vitamin C. And other types of antioxidants with very strong anti-cancer links would be beta-carotene and other types of what are known as carotenoids, which are found in plant foods such as carrots and other types of vegetables, have effects on enhancing what's known as interferon. And levels of interferon are usually lower than normal in cancer patients.
Vitamin C, in high enough doses, is capable of destroying cancer cells. It is capable of inhibiting the spreading enzymes that cancer cells produce. It's a strong immune enhancer as well as a strong antioxidant to defend the body against the ravages of chemical toxins. I use vitamin C intravenously in doses of 25 to 50 grams per day. When patients come in, they receive not only vitamin C in their intravenous infusions, but also B-complex vitamins, B6 in particular, which I give in larger doses, namely 400 milligrams per day. I use germanium in my IVs, which is a strong antioxidant as well as an oxygen carrier. Germanium has strong anti-tumor properties. I use magnesium, potassium, a variety of substances that enhance the immune system.
Selenium we actually get because the vegetables are grown in the soil. And in a good soil, they actually will have enough selenium. Soil is very important. That's why we really need to use organic fruits and vegetables, because the fruits and vegetables from organic soils are cultivated and will have more of the antioxidants. Those that are from regular soil, which is not organic, are depleted of most of these nutrients.
Superoxide dismutase is also known as SOD. It's an enzyme that's involved in detoxification and free radical quenching. Often in many of cancer patients that we evaluate, superoxide dismutase is found to be functioning inadequately. By using various minerals such as manganese, zinc, and other minerals, the enzyme superoxide dismutase, or SOD, can be activated and work more efficiently to detoxify and quench free radicals.
There are herbs that can be very helpful in the detoxification process, such as milk thistle, yellow dock, dandelion, parsley. Certain nutrients can be very beneficial. A very exciting nutrient is lipoic acid. Lipoic acid is it's 8-carbon fatty acid with 2 sulfurs on it, which is very similar to some of the lipids that Dr. Ravici worked with. And lipoic acid can chelate certain toxins, including mercury, as well as being a very powerful antioxidant, and also works catabolically on the system. So this is a new nutrient that has direct bearing on Dr. Ravici's work. Certain herbs, herbal preparations, such as Cassie's tea, which is an herbal tea which has been used in Canada for about 70 years now for treatment of cancer as well as other chronic conditions, has a variety of herbs that help the body detoxify. Aloe vera from a wholly organic aloe vera plant, cold processed, can be very beneficial. There are many studies that show that aloe vera is a very important stimulator of the immune system, as well as helping the body to detoxify. There's been research on other herbs, such as shiitake mushrooms, maitake mushrooms, cat's claw, astragalus, echinacea, golden seal. All of these herbs can have an appropriate place in helping stimulate the immune system.
Maitake mushroom has been shown to activate natural killer cells, cytotoxic T cells, interleukin 1 and 2. It also has been shown to produce, to allow immune cells to produce superoxide anion, which has been shown to have direct tumor inhibitory effects.
There's been some very interesting research on protease inhibitors. The drug companies have manipulated the molecule to make it into a drug, so it is patentable and they can get their profits from distribution. However, protease is found in soy products and rice. The soy protein powders, though, sometimes the protease is destroyed in the processing. So the soybean is the best source of this cancer-preventing agent. Also, the research is indicating that it actually destroys cancer cells as well. There's also some research on the shark cartilage that has been very effective against certain kinds of cancers. However, the effectiveness has been found at very high doses, like 90 grams to 150 grams of shark cartilage a day. Taking 1 or 2 tablets a day is good for prevention, but not for treatment. So before you go that high, I would seek some supervision when using that particular form of alternative therapy.
I use several means to try to stimulate the natural killer cells. I use homeopathic alpha interferon in a 4-CH. I also use naltrexone, which was pioneered by Dr. Bihari from New York, 3 milligrams before bedtime. Or I use aristolochic acid, which is derived from, I think it's believed called woodbine in English, and is given in a dose of 0.15 milligrams 6 times per day. I also, in the evening, give people astragalus, which stimulates interleukin 2, together with melatonin, which work well together, and quite a lot of tests have been done. It can be 30 to 40 milligrams of melatonin, together with the astragalus, or often I combine them in a combination of hoxie herbs with astragalus, usually around 8 o'clock in the evening.
Needless to say, in just one segment, we can't handle everything on cancer, so we'll return next week, sharing more in our continuing series on cancer natural approaches. I'm Gary Knoll. Thank you very much for watching.